Hello and welcome to round 11 of Pro Tour Born of the Gods. Brian David Marshall with Randy Bueller, about to watch Hall of Famer Brian Kibler. There you see him take on up-and-comer Josh McLean. Josh McLean, 2 Grand Prix top 8s, including a win. Both players are playing Born of the Gods draft here, and Josh McLean is leads it off with an island. He's playing a blue-black deck, Randy. A deck that I think some people have said feels like it maybe got a little worse. Sure. With Born of the Gods, it was like one of the pros' favorite archetypes, but there you see Vaporkin. That card is still an efficient, evasive creature.
Indeed.
And then blue-white for Brian Kibler, and we've seen a lot of that this weekend. Some of the top pros, people of that sort of top tier seem to love these white-based decks.
Yeah, certainly the consensus I've heard is that white is the best color.
Yeah.
You want to be white, and then white also has an advantage, kind of like black, where in Theros, the really good cards are double-colored. So people will pass you Gray Merchant. People will pass you Phalanx Leader.
Yeah. So we see a Wave Crash Triton come down for Josh McLean, and then Brian takes the opportunity to bounce Vaporkin at the end of the turn with a Voyage's End. Mm-hmm. Takes 2 from it, and then bounces it once the sort of coast is clear.
So this matchup was actually chosen by you viewers. Trick Jarrett put out the call on Twitter. Who do you guys want to see in the feature match area?
They chose Brian. If Brian Kibler got the bye, they would still want to see this match, right?
Yes, Kibler was the guy who got the most requests.
There's an observant Alciad for Brian Kibler, who's looks like he's struggling a little bit with his mana.
Yeah, it's a pretty key matchup too. I mean, these guys are both X3.
Yes, they are.
So the winner will stay in top 8 contention, and the loser is just playing for, points and money and glory, but not the top 8.
Other than our King of the Hill table, only Patrick Dickman has a loss to give in this top 8, in this feature match area today. The Vaporkin comes back down. Play a second swamp. And the flicking of cards. Horizon Chimera. Coastline Chimera. Horizon Chimera would be much more exciting. We have an Ashen Rider in play on the back table. Sam Parie destroying one of Eric Frolic's permanents. Yeah, and that was enough for him to win the game.
Ashen Rider also destroys players.
Yeah. It
Sounds about right.
really does.
Okay, I'll bite.
Okay,
Josh attacks. Brian knew something was up. Is that Necrobite? Regeneration and Death Touch?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Cards? 3.
Yeah. Kibler still at a robust 18 here. Josh McLean.
Yeah, I mean, he knew there was a trick coming.
20, yeah.
Figures it's just a Coastline
Chimera.
It's not a great card.
If you actually get a card for it, you're pretty happy.
Traded it for something.
Normally things just bounce off of it.
Yeah. Laguna Band Elder does gain life thanks to the Alciad.
Yeah.
And attack.
Okay. Go ahead.
Block check. He's like, I just want to see if you're going to block. No reason not to. There's a Chorus of the Tides drawn off the top. One of the top blue commons.
19.
Born of the Gods.
Yeah, I was listening to some of the players beforehand. They were saying that the 2/3 Bestow guy is the best blue common.
Oh, Nyxborn Triton?
Yeah, I was not expecting to hear that, but
yeah, that card's really good.
It was Owen and Huey and Reed, Andrew Cuneo. I was kind of listening to. They had that in the top 5.
And it's done very well online. If you look at the results from Magic Online, it's also been right up there with the Chorus of Tides as far as top pick commons and successful blue-based decks.
Bestow Eidolon of Countless Battles.
Oh, well.
Yeah, that was Brian's first pick. I saw him when he was getting the lands for his deck from the station.
So that is a... How big is that?
It's so Eidolon gives it +1/+1 for each enchantment.
So it gets +1. So it's
getting
and
plus-
creature.
And creature, so it's getting +3, I believe. Turning it into a 5/5 vigilance.
Well, he controls 2 creatures and he controls 2 enchantments.
Oh,
so
it's only auras. That's what I keep forgetting.
Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
There's only one aura. I keep thinking
It's not,
enchantment
yeah, right.
creatures.
It's not an
bump it up.
aura. It's not an aura.
Enchantment creatures only count for
Yeah.
1.
So a sip of hemlock saves us a lot of math.
It's still in play. It's still, and it sees itself as a creature, but it is no longer an aura. So it is a 2/2. Thanks to the other creature that's in play.
Cards. 2.
So, hopeful Eidolon. Yep.
Now here we go.
4/4.
What did he bestow onto it? Is that Hopeful Eidolon?
Yeah.
So +1 from the Hopeful Eidolon, +1 from the fact that it's an aura. Now it's a 4/4 lifelinker, and yeah, cracks away. Deals 4, gains 4. It's a good card, Eidolon. Countless battles. Also fits straight into my commander deck.
This is interesting here. It's like Josh McLean has a grip tide, but that actually just seems like it could be worse.
He's happy that he's already demoted the Eidolon to being a creature. Doesn't
Yeah.
want to give it the chance to bestow.
Yeah, well, you know, you grip tide it, you get a hopeful Eidolon, and then you just bestow that with it's just changing positions.
Do what you got to do, though.
He is going to grip tide it.
I mean, he trades effectively a card for card and saves himself the damage.
Go ahead.
Doesn't give Kibler the life. Does seem awfully hard for him to race with those flyers, though. I mean, he comes over for 5. Now it's even harder to race with the flyers. Divine Verdicts takes the 3/2 out of the air.
Yeah. And here's the returned phalanx.
It is not going to get the job done.
Cards. 2.
So here's the Eidolon of Countless Battles. And you see why it gets its name. It's the
Countless, yeah. So you bestow on the Hopeful Eidolon here because you want the lifelink?
oh yeah.
And it'll be, but then it's a 4/4, which can in theory be double blocked and killed. Oh, a Traveling Philosopher. Now, okay, 2 more creatures. He's gearing up to make the Eidolon into a much better threat
hypnotist.
next turn. 1 more land, he would have been able to go creature bestow, but this will be good enough.
Yeah, the Deepwater Hypnotist.
Yeah, McClain can fly over for 2, and I have no reason not to, since he can't block with Vaporkin.
7.
But I like Brian's position. Does Josh have anything in his hand?
Yes, he does.
Oh my. That's a card.
So it sounds like Sean McLaren up 1 game on Christian Sebold, who did not have his Prognostic Sphinx or his Storm Breath Dragon this game.
Interesting. Yeah, Josh McLean made an interesting play there too. He chose to say go. Instead, he doesn't want to. Basically, he's sitting on nullify.
Yeah.
His plan is to nullify that Eidolon.
And that's what he's going
Yeah,
to
it's
get to
gonna
do
work.
right here.
Nullify. Okay.
And now he's
And he's
gonna be
still
able-
got Sea God's
yeah,
Revenge
he's
for
got
later.
Sea God's Revenge in hand.
That makes that Griptide line a lot better. Worked out quite well, actually.
Draw.
Is it time to play the most appropriately named card in the entire set?
The Perplexing Chimera.
That card, it's so perplexing.
I blame you, the community. Or is that?
First Oppression Chimera.
Okay. And just no
That's
good
3/4.
attacks here for
Yeah, without the Eidolon,
Brian.
Brian's Kibler's his creatures are kind of darky. 2/1, 2/2, 1/1, 3/2. They're gonna cross the board with a 1/4, a 3/3, and a 3/4. Brian's also down to 5 life at this point. Wait, isn't he just dead? What does he have in his hand?
Well, now he has a perplexing chimera.
Okay.
So now I guess if there's a
McClain is
divine,
like, if you have a trick, I will take control of it. Wow, perplexing chimera is going to win this game. Brian did have a trick. If this works, right? He takes control of the Ray of Dissolution, and then he gains the life. The Chimera is going to die, but because McClain gains the life, his 5 power worth of flyers is enough to be lethal, right?
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
He gives him the Perplexing Chimera and takes control of the Ray of Dissolution, and then Ray of Dissolution's the Perplexing Chimera.
Yeah, which isn't relevant. I mean, Brian was only playing it because he needed to gain 3 life to stay alive.
Yeah.
And yeah, when Josh took control of the Ray, he gained the life, so the 5 power worth of flyers was good enough.
So we're going to check in on some of these other matches as soon as we hear these messages.
Card House Games has all your Magic needs covered, from boosters and fat packs to a wide range of Magic accessories. Use the promo code PTVAL for 10% off your next purchase at cardhousegames.com. Head to your local game store on March 1st and 2nd for the Born of the Gods Game Day. Play in a fun standard tournament and take the next step on the hero's path by battling the Horde. Visit wizards.com/Magic Game Day for more information.
All right, we're back. I think we're going to take a look at Sam Parie versus Eric Frolic. So this is a match that's being covered by the text reporter. You'll be able to read about this all in great detail.
So Sam's up a game?
Yeah, Sam Parie is up a game. He's on the left. You see 2 Disciple of Fenix and
Flesh Mad Steed.
A Flesh Mad Steed, yeah. Going up against Arena Athlete, Crackling Triton ×2, and the Bronze Sable. Efro is down to 13.
He's attacking with Flesh Mad into Crackling Triton. Really representing a trick.
No? What turns out he had Drowning Sorrow.
Sure. So that gives everybody -2/-2, which is enough because the Crackling Titan had taken damage from Flesh Mad. It's enough to finish it off. And also, if Sam was planning to play the Drowning Sorrow, Flesh Mad was Dead Man Walking anyway. And Eric, of course, responds by sacking his Triton to throw in 2 damage and take down one of the Disciples, but a lot of clutter just got cleared away.
And then, letting him set up behind a Scholar of Athreos.
Yep.
And, just whittle Eric down to size with it. Oh, there's a Marsh Titan.
Yep. Yeah, that guy's a decent man.
Marsh Mist Titan.
I mean, a lot of times the black decks in this format have a lot of removal. They just need something to attack with. And he attacks pretty effectively.
Efro's down to 9. There's the returned Phalanx.
With no blue mana?
Well, he's got a... He can do something there.
Oh, he's got Unknown Shores?
He's got an Unknown Shores. He can get in if he has to. But Scholar starts nibbling.
Yeah. Sam's position looks pretty solid here.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the red creature on top? Yeah, that's the hand.
Wow.
Sam Parie. Smidster.
Stays in contention for top 8.
Stays alive.
Goes to Modern, which is a format he's done extremely well at over the years.
Absolutely.
He definitely seems like the kind of guy that could just make a run, pick up 4 wins, and then hope to shake hands in the last round.
Eric Frolic now drops to 4 losses.
Yes.
Which means he's playing for position here at this point.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that lives in the top 25.
We're going to, while these guys are still shuffling up at our main table, we're going to just take a quick peek in on the King of the Hill table, see how Christian Sebold's doing in his defense of the of his throne.
It's been a hard hill to defend so far.
Yeah. And there we see Return Centaur target you. Look at that. He hits the Stormbreath Dragon. Just like he drew it up. This looks like an ill-tempered Cyclops. And Dragon Mantle. Sean McLaren is up 1 game here over Christian. Christian unseated Li Shi Tian last round from the King of the Hill table.
Yeah, and this is, I believe this is also table 1.
Yes.
And this is to win Pod 1.
Yes.
Both
yes.
of these players came in after 7-1 days yesterday, won the first 2 rounds of draft.
3 cards.
So the winner will be sitting in 10-1, and first place, either depending on one other result, they'll either be tied for first with 1 player or all alone.
And interesting, maybe with everyone fighting over all these white cards. Interesting
it's a blue-black deck and a blue-red deck.
Interesting to see these guys almost
that's a good point.
Maybe these color combinations are less powerful than the white-based decks.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe the available cards you have to work with and the price you have to pay to draft them, meaning you can draft them a little later in the pack. You don't have to.
Right.
Is such that you end up with better decks in non-white colors right now.
Is McLaren 3 colors?
He might be 3
He's
colors.
holding white cards. He is one of the white drafters, but it was forced to go into these other 2 colors, see?
Yeah, he just went to 16 from Read the Bones here.
That was the thought.
He might be 4 colors. I don't know if he has anything for that red.
Looks like he's holding a gray merchant. He seems to be base black, but he's splashing a couple things.
Yeah, let's take a look. Sean is, he's actually black, white, splashing blue.
Okay.
So.
That makes sense.
He's splashing blue, it looks like, for 2 grip tides. So he's been just scuffling for his white mana here.
Got it.
You got on the other table, just while we're waiting for those guys to be ready, Kibler is down to 5 cards. If he's going to even things up against Josh McLean, that's what he's going to have to work with on the play. Yeah, it's just the 2 grip tides. That's what the blue's there for. And it's kind of punishing Sean here a little bit. Monstrous, ill-tempered Cyclops. Grip tide's going to look pretty good at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No real choice there.
Good.
The Dragon Mantle fell off as if it was a bestow creature. That doesn't stay in play.
All right. Let's see if white mana still eluding Sean, but he's got a gray merchant, which will buy him a little bit of time here.
This is game 2?
This is game 2. Sean is up a game. So I think we're going to come back to these guys. We'll check in on them a little later, see how the King of the Hill table's doing. But in the meantime, we're ready to go back to Brian Kibler and Josh McLean and see if Brian Kibler, with only 5 cards to work with, can even things up against the Grand Prix Detroit champion. All right, and there you have it.
Found one.
Found one, says Brian.
Go.
Is it Shipwreck Singer hanging out in McLean's hand?
That is Shipwreck Singer. Cards took a little while for people to figure out, but there's Oresco's Sun Guide. I think it looks like a Ordeal of Thassa, which could unmulligan Brian if that's
19. Go.
Pillar of War. So that's a 3/3 defender, and if it's enchanted, it loses defender.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen that. I don't think I've played with that card or seen it played against me yet.
Hilariously, I think Kibler is flipping his cards so fast that we cannot get them written down. They're just flying by, and our man on the floor has been unable to populate.
So that's not an ordeal then.
I don't know.
It's an ordeal of Willoughby as he tries to read Brian Kibler's cards.
Seriously. Cards in hand is loading.
Comes Scourge Mark. Oh, and that gets dissolved. He's like, no, you're not going to attack me with your silly Pillar of War. But the Shipwreck Singer can crash those Sun Guide on the rocks of the pillar here. Divine Verdict never looks better than when you're forcing your opponent to attack with it beforehand. You're like, well, of course I have the attack better, but he's not even going to bother.
Yep. 4-4.
So Florian Pills has won his match. Sounds like a mono black deck. Lots of
Over
ways.
Patrick Dickman. So Dickman had a loss to give here.
And
Florian
gave it.
did not. Yeah, he just gave it. Yeah. He's like, all right, I would like to play Modern, please. I would like to cast my Splinter Twin. So 4/4 Oresco Sun Guide has to attack. And
Oh, double block.
yep.
That's a pretty good play. He's willing to trade Shipwreck Singer for Sun Guide there. And obviously depower the Eidolon.
Yeah.
I guess McClain knows he's up 2 cards, so getting the chance to trade 1 for 1, even if maybe your card is slightly more powerful, because of the mulligan, it just makes an attrition strategy like that more powerful.
Appreciate Chimera attack. Divine Verdict it. Vortex Elemental. This is Marshall Sutcliffe's favorite card.
Yeah.
He did some just. It was like the downheaval. Like he had just like some crazy long game with Rashad Miller, and he was able to like basically put 3 cards a turn on into Rashad's library and
Wow.
like clear the board. There's the
Is
next
that the
one.
game where they both had?
Yeah. Yes.
They both had monstrous Colossi.
Yes. So Nyxborn Triton on the Eidolon of Countless Battles, but pass.
So,
Because now the Vortex, Sip of Hemlock.
jeez.
That Vortex Elemental just needs to be blocked or blocking to be use its ability of shuffling both of those creatures into their opponent's library. Deepwater.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see Brian seems a little bit resigned to his fate here.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still playing.
Jeez.
Oh, jeez.
Jesus, right? Thromocratus. Sounds like back-to-back burn spells from Christian Sebold have evened things up against Sean McLaren on the King of the Hill table.
They'll be going to game
And
3.
I think we're going to be... I gotta say, it feels like we're
This
going to be able
doesn't
to...
look like it's going to last a
does
lot longer.
not seem like there's much more magic to be played here.
All right, hopeful Eidolon. He's got a 3/4 life linker, but still can't block Dromocratus, right?
Well, you can, just everybody has to block. If anybody's going to block.
Shit, go.
Oh, and an Arbiter of the Ideal.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh. So now, some really funky stuff starts happening here with the Vortex Elemental.
I'm gonna make this guy block it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck on turn. You too.
Yeah. Josh McLean.
Kind of funny. I had this in my hand, and like the guy's.
Oh,
next to me,
yeah,
other
yeah,
than-
yeah. That's about the only thing that gets him is Divine Verdict.
Yeah, and I had just used my Divine Verdict.
Yeah,
'cause I was just
yeah.
like, well, I need to be able to use my
Yeah.
mana.
Yeah.
Talking about how
Otherwise,
Divine
the turn
Verdict
can't
would have been
just
a
do it.
lovely card to have in your hand against Thromocratus.
All right, well, Kibler is knocked out of top 8 contention.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that puts Brian Kibler down to X and 4.
Yep.
So 7
he
and
started
4.
5-0, too. I
Yeah,
think
he started off really well.
He's been struggling since that start.
But Josh McLean still alive,
top
looking
8.
to replicate his Grand Prix success at
Sure.
the Pro Tour level. And we are going to be able to go over to the King of the Hill table and see if the King can defend his crown. Christian Sebold against Sean McLaren. More Canadians in the feature match area.
That's the only feature match left going?
This is the only match left. Josh McLean has defeated Brian Kibler. Florian Pills has defeated Patrick Dickman. Florian stays alive. Patrick is now sort of
No longer has
walking
a loss
along
to
the
give.
cliff's edge. And Samuel Parie defeated Eric Frolic, sending Eric into the sort of, below top 8 bracket of the standings.
Right.
Sam Parie is still alive.
Eric is queued up for an unlucky 12th.
Yes.
It's where he lives, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on this draft format overall?
You know, I've enjoyed it. I mean, we've done
me too.
4 coverage drafts. I think I've drafted 4 very different decks.
Okay.
I've drafted blue-black. I've drafted red-blue. I've drafted white-green and blue-white.
Okay.
You know, and I've you know, felt like all the decks were, you know, solid decks. I felt pretty good about them. Or red-black Minotaurs, I think, is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like I always want to be heroic.
Sure.
I mean, the colors are negotiable, but
that's where I start.
I want to be heroic
in this format, but yeah. So it sounds like we're ready to go to the floor. The players are ready to get started. We're going to see Sean McLaren, who's attempting to dethrone Christian Sebold from the King of the Hill table. Let's put it back down to the floor. There you get a look at our feature match area. The last match playing. All the judges and tournament staff huddled around them, taking note of their hands. Sebold leads off with a mountain, and it's a plains for Sean McLaren. Magic Online Championship player. He's got his white and his black this game. He's splashing blue for a couple of Grip Tides. And a Nimbus Naiad for Sebold. He doesn't have any red cards in his deck. He's just playing the Scryland for the value of scrying. It's essentially a swamp that comes into play tapped for him.
But scries.
But scries.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty good.
It's like a guild great.
Not a guild gate, but a guild great.
Yeah. And there you get a look at what Sebold's got to work with. He's got 3 more lands in his hand, a Lightning Strike, and a Bolt of Keranos.
Yeah.
So
he wishes he had one more creature. The 2 burn spells seem perfect for playing a couple creatures, clearing blockers, and just trying to win the game. But 7 lands, 1 creature, and 2 burn spells, not as good.
So Excoriate takes down the Nimbus Naiad.
Yeah, especially when the 1 creature gets knocked out. Now he's in danger of just kind of flooding. He needs to draw. Another mountain is not the draw he wanted there.
Well, I mean, he's okay with it. If it ends up, giving him a Stormbreath Dragon.
Sure. McLaren, on the other hand, is building up to Elspeth.
Yes.
Quite content to have his opponent do not much. Does he have? And he has the second plains in his hand.
There's a Blood Toll Harpy. Both players lose a life when it comes into play.
Oh, another mountain for Sebold.
He's gonna Bolt of Keranos that and Scry, assuming Sean has nothing to say about it. Perhaps like a God's Willing, but no.
Pushes to the bottom. Wow, McLaren gets to go Elspeth on an empty board.
He's gonna be
one of the most powerful cards in the format.
He's going to be able to follow up Elspeth
with
Evangel of Heliod and make 4 more tokens.
Right. So this turn is 3 tokens. Next turn will be 7 for a total of 10.
And he's like, are you playing Scouring Sands?
Yeah, it's not even clear that Stormbreath Dragon has time to catch up. Stormbreath Dragon's not even going to have time to kill Elspeth. This King of the Hell idea, is this just poison? You don't want to be the king? It's like being the Goblin King or something?
I mean, it's hard to keep winning at this level. Once you get to the top of the standings,
turns out everybody's really good.
Yeah, it's just, man, can't I just get an easy round here? All right. And here comes Evangel of Heliod. Is Sebold going to Lightning Strike the Evangel in response to?
Right, you can put the trigger on the stack and then kill the creature so that when the trigger resolves, there'll only be 2 white pips.
No.
This is not his plan. So now there's 10 1/1 creatures.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Sebold just throws down his hand disgustedly.
All right, good news to you, Doug Potter. You're going to get to watch Sean McLaren again next round because he is the new King of the Hill. He defeats Christian Sebold, who falls to 2 losses. Still in great shape heading into Modern.
Absolutely
and
true.
Sean McLaren wins his draft pod 3-0 and has just 1 loss going into the last leg of this tournament, which is going to be 5 rounds of Modern.
Yep.
So, very exciting. I'm sure Sebold would have liked to see something a little different there.
Oh,
but,
we get an interview with him.
I think we're going to get a chance to talk to Sean McLaren, find out a little bit more about him.
Do we know what he's playing in Modern?
You know, I'm not certain what he's playing.
Not sure either.
But
Yeah, maybe Tim will ask him.
okay, I think I think Tim is ready to talk to him in a moment. But while these guys sort out their cards, get their dice put away, get everything, because it's so, not as nerve-wracking at the end of the last round of the draft.
Sure.
But, when you're leaving the tournament area, you're like, do I have all my cards? Do I have 40 cards? Do I have 60 cards?
And the players get a lunch break now, too.
Yes,
right?
they do get a lunch break. And we'll find out a little bit about who Sean McLaren worked with. What deck he's playing in Modern, and what he thinks he needs to have happen for him down these last 5 rounds of play when Tim talks to him. Okay, so
we're done with draft.
We are done.
It's all Modern now.
It's all Modern decks.
All right.
So let's see what Modern deck Sean McLaren's playing, and send it down to Tim Willoughby on the floor.
Thank you, Brian. I'm here with Sean McLaren now. That was quite a game, but Elspeth really took a big role in that. How does it feel when you're already in white, you've come into today, only 1 loss, you open, was it your 2nd or 3rd pack, and see Elspeth?
It was 3rd pack, and right before that I was feeling pretty terrible because my deck was a complete mess. It had no win condition. Then I opened Elspeth and pretty much brought the deck together, gave me a plan.
I mean, yeah, if you're looking for a win condition, there are a few in the format that are better than Elspeth. I mean, now we're moving back into Modern. What deck is it that you're playing in Modern?
Blue, white, red control.
A popular choice for this tournament. And what sort of things were you expecting to be facing today?
I was expecting mostly Zoo, Pod, Twin, and other blue-white control decks, but pretty much everything. Since it's Modern, you're going to potentially play anything.
And that, of course, I guess one of the strengths of the red-white-blue deck. It's got a lot of game against everything. It's got the control plan against more or less every deck. And what was your record in Modern yesterday?
1 loss, so 4-1.
So plenty of victories thus far. You're a 6-0 drafter for this format. Yep. Have you got a secret? Is there a tip? Is there anything that I can learn, that we can at home can learn to do?
Get incredibly lucky. My decks were pretty monstrous. Like my first deck had 3 Sip of Hemlocks, and that deck was just like 2 Read the Bones and a Divination.
But I mean, the thing is, if you're not quite sure if the deck's any good, if you're still winning, then you must be quite the player, right?
That must be it.
So here we are, 1 loss, looking in great position going into Modern. I'm going to pass back to the booth now, but I've been Tim Willoughby. Thank you.
I think Sean's probably being a little modest there. I'm kind of excited to have a deck with 3 Sip of Hemlocks, by the way.
They're so expensive.
Yeah.
Do you want to play against, Traveling Philosopher with your 3 Sip of Hemlock?
I'm just going to run them into my return phalanxes all day long. All right. Let's send it back to the news desk. We're going to grab some lunch, and when we come back, it is going to be time for Modern, and to figure out who's going to be the top 8 of Pro Tour Born of the Gods. Sending it back to you, Rich.
All right, thank you very much, Brian David Marshall. Randy Buehler with the call there on the last round of draft here at Pro Tour Born of the Gods. It is going to be Modern all the way to determine a champion. As we head into Modern, our best guess is round about 50 players will still be live to claim the title tomorrow. That is with 3 losses or fewer going in. One of those players is sitting beside me here at the news desk, and it's a great pleasure to welcome this gentleman here, Mr. Josh McLean. Josh, how are you, sir?
Good, good.
Yeah, it's always great to have players in. This is your first time at the news desk, right?
Yep.
Well, you're very welcome. As you see, it's not rocket science, it's a table and some chat. You're very welcome. You're in the face-to-face game shirt. Why don't we take a look at the big board and see how things are going with team face-to-face games. So you can see on the left, right-hand side, a few results still to come in. BBD at 5 and 5. Lucas and Dave Shields didn't make it through. Yep. But by and large, I mean, you've got some really nice scores there. And in particular, 3 of you up at the top, yourself at 8-3, Sam Parie we saw winning this round as well at 8-3, and then Jacob Wilson, 9-2. Tell us a little bit about Jacob, because not particularly in Europe, we don't know a lot about him. We saw him come across for a couple of European GPs. He's super good, right?
Yeah, he's insane. He's insanely good. I'm fairly confident he's going to top 8 this Pro Tour. You know, he's 3-0'd his draft. He's got a great, you know, I think our pod list is pretty good, and I really think he's got a really good shot here. Yeah, but he's very good at Magic. You know, he's just, you know, he won a couple Star City Opens. He's top 8 at a bunch, won a Grand Prix, top 8 at a bunch of Grand Prix. I know Sam always gives him a bunch of crap because he says that he's never played a good deck in a Pro Tour, and now he actually has a good deck, and now he's doing really well.
Well, Jacob's interesting because he's one of those players. So many players you see do very well at GP level, and then they don't quite make the jump to Pro Tour level. And even people like, to now, household names like Luis Scott Vargas is someone who was terrific at GP level, but would play kind of dirty decks, whatever deck he felt like bringing. And I remember clearly interviewing him after he won Pro Tour Berlin in 2008. And he said, I said, what's the difference?
Stop playing Thruns, I think
I stopped playing nonsense. I started playing the best deck in the room and played it better than other people. That was was what he went for. So it's interesting. Keep an eye on Jacob Wilson. Now I'm going to give you the golden opportunity to lose millions of friends in one sentence. I can't help noticing on the standings there that in the air quotes Team Canada, it's 3 Americans at the top. Is that what you expected? Be careful. Be really careful.
Well, you know, we have just a little bit more. Well, Jacob's kind of 1.5 because he actually lives in Canada now. Okay. So, but no, I mean, I thought me and Sam would do well. You know, we both been playing Melirapod for a long time. Yeah. So I thought we'd do well, and Jacob's just really good, so I thought he'd do well. You know, Alex is obviously doing very well. I think he was X2 going into this round.
Yeah, he's just missed out now.
7-4, or X3 rather.
But the thing is, tell me about this US-Canada alliance, because it does seem like a truly, one of the few genuinely North American teams. How has the testing been? Has it been fun?
Oh, yeah, it's been great. It was a little scattered this time. I think that just has to do with it being modern. You know, there's so many different decks. So many people don't want to, you know, they want to play what they want to play, which is fine, you know, for modern. Modern's so diverse. I feel like you should play whatever you're good at playing. You know, even if one deck's a little bit better than the other, you should just stick to what you know.
Is it pretty exciting for you, Modern, in as much as you can play the deck you want and be reasonably secure that it cannot be, air quotes, the wrong choice?
Yeah, you know, it's great.
Is that a big deal?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, you know, I do think Melirapod is a great choice for the tournament. But even if I thought it was maybe not, I would still probably play it because I've played it for so much that, you know, and I would know that I still have a good shots to do reasonably well just because I know my deck very well.
Give me a sense of what difference the banning of Deathrite Shaman and the unbanning of Wild Nacatl and Bitter Blossom made to the format as we head back into Modern.
It definitely shook things up a bit. I know Jund was like really popular in the best deck before, which was one of your really good matchups. So it kind of sucks that people don't play Jund as much anymore. And the combo decks that struggled against Jund are now more popular, and those matchups are kind of tricky. So I think it got a little worse for Pod, but I still, you know, and we obviously lost Deathrite Shaman too. But your Zoom matchup's, you know, pretty close, and your Fairy matchup I think is pretty good. So I think the format's still pretty good for Pod.
Okay, I want to take you back in time a little way to a couple of GPs where you were quite busy quite late in the day. As Brad Nilsson likes to say, all I really want is to keep playing Magic till somebody makes me stop. And you took that to pretty much the ultimate extreme with 2 particular performances. Let's go to Miami 2013. It's standard. What did you play in that event?
I played Junk and Burial Rites, the Junk Reanimator deck.
And you while your way through day 1 and you pile through day 2 and you get into the top 8 and you get into the semis and you get into the final, and waiting there is Reed Duke, who apart from being the sweetest man alive is also one of the best Magic players
He's very good.
What happens in the final?
The finals, I won game 1, and then he mulliganed to 5 in game 2, so I was feeling really good. Yeah, and then he ended up beating me games 2 and 3 with Olivia Voldaren. I actually just picked up the deck like a week before. I hadn't played with it that much. I just, you know, I was gonna fly to Miami. If I didn't day 2, I could go to the beach, you know, have fun. So it should be a pretty sweet vacation. So I wasn't super practiced with the deck, so I wasn't quite sure how to sideboard against him, and I sideboarded pretty badly, and that definitely it punished me in the games 2 and 3. So he beat me in games 2 and 3. Yeah. But yeah, I was feeling pretty good when, you know, I was up a game and he's mulliganing to 5. So
Yeah, and the thing is, he doesn't need a lot of help.
yeah,
Let's be fair.
for sure, for
Okay,
sure.
so nonetheless, congratulations, brilliant job. Make a final of a GP, awesome. Let's fast forward to Detroit. The format's modern this time, and this time I take it you're playing Malirapod, right?
Malirapod.
Okay, so while you're way through day 1, you pile into day 2, you get into the top 8, you win the quarters, you win the semis. Who's in the final?
Reed Duke again.
Yeah, which is just
It's crazy.
bonkers.
I couldn't believe it. You know, I've been joking with my friends the night before. I was like, I feel like I'm going to get knocked out of this tournament by Reed, or I'm going to play him in the finals again, and it actually happened. It was so unreal.
Did that start coming into view like a long time in advance? Was it like once you were into the top 8 and you saw the bracket?
Well, yeah, once we were in the top 8, then we looked and we saw, if I make it to the finals, I'll be playing against Reed again if he makes it. So
Yeah.
it was surreal, you know.
Did it? Every good Magic player gives me the answer that in a way I don't want, which is it was just another match. I just played my usual Magic and it turned out that I was able to win. But come on, you're my banker on this.
Yeah.
Surely having the second GP final against the same guy must have had an edge.
No, I definitely, you know, I mean, even after I lost the finals in Miami, you know, I was very happy to qualify for, you know, Dublin and get second in a GP. It was crazy, but you know, I really got the fire that I really wanted to win. You know, just second place is so much worse than first, so I really wanted to win. And then the same guy, so I felt pretty determined going into that match.
Did you feel better prepared because it was your own Malirapod deck and you hadn't just picked up the deck?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've always felt pretty confident playing Modern. I know I worked on the list with Sam before the tournament, and he had a lot of cool innovations to the deck, like the Spike Feeder Archangel combo we added, or he added really, and so I thought the list was pretty good. I knew the list was going to be good because I trusted him, and then I just tried to play well.
And in the final, what happens?
I ended up winning 2-1. Let's see, I think I actually lost it, so I reversed it. I lost game 1 and then beat him games 2 and 3.
Yeah, that is the correct order to do things in, it turns out. Listen, fantastic to talk to you. Thanks for being with us again. From face-to-face games, Josh McLean still very much in the mix. Malirapod, one of the best modern players in the field, over 70% win rate in modern. That is way above Hall of Fame territory in that format. So watch out for Josh down the stretch. Thanks very much to Josh McLean. He's going to head out. Marshall Sutcliffe's going to come in and join us here at the news desk. But first, why don't I give you some scores on the doors, because we've got some housekeeping to do from all those draft pods we've been looking at through the morning. So let me take you first of all to pod 1, and we'll see how that pod shook out. There you see it. Sean McLaren came in, and he now goes to 10-1 from Canada. Li Shi-chan, MTG Mid, he's 9-1 and that draw. The 9-2s, Michael Hetrick, he righted the ship, came in at 8-0 and then 9-2. He won his last round to get his first win of the day. Christian Sebold of Germany, 9-2. The king of the hill, they keep on losing. They're not really defending a hill. It turns out they're more, well, they're kind of more defending a fishbowl in which people are shooting repeatedly. That's kind of what's going on there. Florian Pills, 8-3. Andrup, 8-3. Dickman, 8-3. Hunt, 8-3. Dickman and Hunt, huge modern players. Dickman, the Grand Prix winner from Antwerp in October. Hunt playing Amulet of Vigor. Can't wait to see them in action down the stretch. Draft pod 2, on we go. How did they fare? Let's take a look. Here comes draft pod number 2, please. And there it is. Tim Rivera, 9-2. You see how the scores are all bunching up here. No 11-0s, no 10-1s, but 4 guys coming in at 9-2 with 1 loss to give in modern to still be in thorough contention. Rivera, Hendricks of the Netherlands, Grin of Canada, and Chris Fennell from TCG Player on 9-2. The 8-3 still alive, Justin Bransfield, and Joseph Kevaney, who righted the ship. He was down at 6-3, came up to 8-3, winning his last 2. And then Gabriel Nguyen, Andy Shrout, they're gone at 7-4. We believe the 4th loss just about fatal. Let's take you to draft pod number 3. And here, we're just waiting for Rada and Andrada. They were at 6-4 coming in. They may even have dropped at that point, who knows. Quentin Martin, 7-4. Karl Dembinski, 7-4. The 8s are Jingwei Zheng, then Elmer Van Agen. Matej Zatlkai fell to 8-3. So the winner there was David Fulk. He was your winner of that pod. Congratulations congratulations to him. He still has a loss to give in Modern. Draft pod number 4, if you please. And in draft pod number 4, let's see what we get. There you see Jacob Wilson, the big winner. He is at 9-2 from face-to-face games, same team as Josh McLean, just been with us at the news desk. Arjen van Leeuwen doesn't need a team, the twice Grand Prix winner from the Netherlands at 8-3. Also 8-3, Tajak and McClain, who we've just talked to, the 7 and 4s. Kibler, gone. Mann, gone. Wesco, gone. Watsfeld, gone. That is some carnage in pod number 4. That's what drafts do to you. 8 people enter, only one comes out with the perfect record. Kibler, Mann, Wesco, Watsfeld, all gone from draft pod 4. Let's go to draft pod number 5. Again, they all came in 6-2. It's the same pattern. A 9-2 Alexander Orozak from Revolution. The 3-8-3s, Gavela of Spain, Turtenwald of the States, Glied of Hungary. Your 7-4s showing them the door. Tharmaratnam, Ayres, Lundqvist gone from Channel Fireball, and Harry Corvesi unlucky with the 0-3 to be from TCG Player at 6 and 5. Draft pod number 6. We're almost there amongst the 6 and 2s. We have, goodness me, what a story that is. Raymond Tan came in his first PT from Malaysia, one of the highest win percentages I've ever seen in a fledgling Grand Prix career, way up around the 80% mark. Never played the PT before, had a feeling he might just get this game. He is at 9-2, came in at 6-2, wins his pod, back to Modern where he's in great shape. Wow, what a developing story that is. 8-3, Cassajay, the Moscow champion from the Grand Prix. From France, Martin Palarin. Then you've got Omri Tubiana, 7-3-1. That draw could be critical if he or Sittner win back-to-back to get to 5 wins straight in Modern. 12-3-1, that 37th point with the draw, could be the difference between a top 8 and a top 16, top 25. Could be critical, those draws. John Finkel gone, we believe, at 7-4. Reed Duke gone at 7-4. Disappointing for both of those. They went 1-2 in the draft. And I think that's 2 1-2s for John Finkel. Marcelino Freeman from Mexico, the Latin American team, definitely gone at 6-5. One more to show you. Draft pod 7. Here we go. Jared Butcher from Flipside Gaming. He is your big winner there. He advances from 6-2 to 9-2. He's a terrific constructed player. Another with great Modern track record. The 8-3s, Socherek of the Czech Republic, Alkio of Finland, putting together one of his definitely standout Pro Tour performances. This is his 5th go-round. Kai Burnett still there at 8-3. The 7-4s in deep trouble, Kaufman, Hain, Callahan, and absolutely definitely out the door, Antonio Del Moral, Leon. They'll all play for cash and prizes and glory and great tales round the kitchen table, but as we head back into Modern, you're looking at about 50-odd players who can still win Pro Tour Born of the Gods. But before we get to Modern, players are on lunch break. That means we get to talk a little bit about Limited, with one of my favorite Limited resources, the man with the limited information. I might as well get them all in. It's Marshall Sutcliffe. How you doing, Marshall?
Hi, Rich. I'm still actually recovering. I saw a team named Chuckle Muscle.
Yep.
And I also saw somebody named KAI space BU that's not Kai Buddha in the field here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I got out of the whole thing. Also, Finkel 1-2's both drafts?
I think so.
That's brutal.
I think that's right, because I think he had a good back end with Modern, but 1-2 again there, I believe, because he was 6-2 and ended up 7-4.
But now we get to talk Limited, is that?
Yeah, let's talk.
You told me I could talk Limited. You brought me on here to talk Limited, and that's what I really want to do.
So yesterday, I got some Facebook feedback. They said, okay, we loved what you did with BDM. Yesterday morning, you gave us like 4 of the color pairs in BNG Theros draft with the Magic Online data. Where are our other 6? Where is my favorite color pair?
Right.
The answer is in his head, approximately now. So why don't we start with those, and then we've got some little sweet deck lists to take a look at the back end if we get time during lunch, because we've got inside R&D videos to show you as well. Right. So let's get to it. Tell me about Red Green.
So Red Green, you can take a look here. We have Fanatic of Xenagos as sort of the headliner at Uncommon there. Mana Ramp combined with Monstrosity can quickly create threats bigger than opposing decks can handle. The removal in Theros is pretty slow. It's sped up a bit for Born of the Gods, but still handling huge threats is every bit as difficult as it ever has been. And if you can leverage quick mana into massive threats, you can simply outpace your opponent. I mean, you just make bigger things than they do, quicker than they do. I mean, if you've ever faced down a turn 4 Nessian Asp, that's scary enough.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and that's not that hard to do. The deck picks up a few new toys, but it fundamentally didn't change.
Right.
You know, a card like Fanatic of Xenaghost doesn't change the deck. It just gives it something nice to play.
Yeah, it's kind of strange that you've got an entire mechanic missing and an entire new mechanic in, and fundamentally the deck is the same.
That's right.
But I agree, it is. I mean, that's certainly true, but it's a strange one.
Now, I picked a couple of high picks with Searing Blood down there, but there's other options, especially in red. Follow the Hammer is huge for that archetype because they have the biggest creatures to use that power to kill other creatures. And of course, Follow the Hammer being a 2-mana instant means that it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
You see here the red-green top Born of the Gods uncommons, Follow the Hammer headlining it. Now looking down, remember, these are from Born of the Gods. These aren't necessarily the top commons for the archetype, but the ones from Born of the Gods. Bolt of Kronos, boom, right there. 2 removal spells right off the top. And then Ferris Band Tromper, a little underrated to start with. People are kind of like, oh, it's a hill giant.
It's a hill giant, and we call. Just going to say, let's explain why a hill giant is a hill giant.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, for 3 and a red, you got a card called Hill Giant. It was 3/3 and had no abilities at all.
Yeah, some flavor text.
Yeah. Some words, depending on the set, you got a lot of words or a little words.
And these days we tend to get hill giants with upside, as we call them. You know, we had the Ill-Tempered Cyclops from Theros, which was very hill giant-like, but also had Trample and Monstrosity. And here we have Ferris Band Tromper, which once you get it going, gets out of control. The key is to get that first attack step in because that's where it's most vulnerable. And then you can use combat tricks to protect it. You can even untap it a few different ways with Savage Surge and a few things like that. And once it gets rolling, it usually will stay basically 1 drop ahead of the curve for whatever your opponent does.
Okay, let's look at the top uncommons from Born of the Gods. And what we will see is Fanatic of Xenaghost, Raised by Wolves, Searing Blood, Archetype of Aggression, and Nessian Demolock. Tell me about the Demolock.
Yeah, so the Demolock's an interesting one. I think it's still kind of shaking out. I don't know where it's going to fall. It's a tribute card. It can be a 6/6 for 5 mana. Now, you would take that any day.
Yep.
You know, a 6/6 for 5 mana is quite a good limited card. You would play it just on that merit alone. Now, the other side of the spectrum, though, for Tribute is that it's a 3/3 for 5 mana, which is much less exciting, but you get to destroy a non-creature permanent. Now, when it comes to Constructed, you know, that could be something like a Planeswalker, something along those lines. In Limited, you're not going to see that as often. It's mostly going to blow up a land. The question becomes, can you play this on turn 4? Can you play a Voyaging Satyr and then run out your Nessian Demolock? If you can make that happen, this card has a ton of upside. I mean, if they let it be a 6/6, it's going to be the biggest thing on the board every time. If they don't, you're going to set them back on their mana development, which is going to put you way ahead, even though it's just a 3/3. Now, you flash forward to late in the game, much less so. If you play this off the top of your deck in a late game stall, they're like, sure, you know, I'll blow up. You can blow up one of my lands, or maybe they have some random aura that they don't care about anymore, something along those lines, and you get a 3/3. So, you know, the times when this is good, it's probably going to be the best card possible at that time frame, and when it's late, it's going to be really underwhelming.
Okay, what about the combination? Let's see, once we get Born of the Gods and Theros together, let's see what the best commons and uncommons are. So here we go, Lightning Strike, Nessian Asp, Leafcount Dryad, Voyaging Satyr, Fall of the Hammer, and then the uncommons, well, Fanatic of Xena goes right up there. Of course, Removal with Magma Jet, the Nemesis Immortals, the Ordeal, Searing Blood.
Yeah, and the key thing to take away from this, if you're into drafting these big red-green monsters, Theros, 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 Born of the Gods. Right, if you look down the left-hand row. And then on the right, it's Born of the Gods, Theros, 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 Born of the Gods. Now, you're going to be getting 2 packs of Theros, and as you can see, the most important cards are from Theros. This is still a Theros-based archetype. Like I said, it gets some help, but it's not fundamentally different. So what you're trying to do here is pick the cream of the crop from Born of the Gods to set yourself up for the important cards that come in Theros.
So you're expecting to be a little bit behind the curve in terms of if you're trying to get to 23, 24 good playables, you're not necessarily looking for 8 from Born of the Gods.
Right, exactly. And what you can do, though, is you can use that knowledge to your advantage because you can say, well, maybe pack one, my whole first pack wasn't amazing for me, but I know the goods are coming. And I'm going to get get hooked up in the second and third pack.
Okay, I'm going to hook you up with red again. This time I'm going to pair it up with black. Here we go. Tell us about black-red.
So black-red is an aggressive archetype with the ability to abuse tribal Minotaur synergies. Now, we saw a little bit of that on camera earlier with Owen Turtenwald. Now, he was playing against, who was it he was playing? His opponent in the second game went off with the Minotaur deck.
Oh,
I have not seen it like that go before. It was unbelievable. You get access to removal spells. We've talked about these ones before. And if you play a lot of limited, you got to remember these ones. Searing Blood, Fall of the Hammer, Bile Blight, Bolt of Keranos, and Asphyxiate, especially the red ones. Those are common. You see them all the time. Asphyxiate's pretty good too, especially in this type of archetype. The thing about Asphyxiate is it only destroys untapped creatures, right?
Yep.
Well, what are untapped creatures? They either have Summoning Sickness or they want to block. Right, so a freshly cast card or one that's like, oh, I'm going to block. Well, if you are an aggressive deck, you can leverage Asphyxiate the best. If you're trying to be a control deck and you're being attacked over and over and over, there might not be a great window for Asphyxiate. It certainly loses a lot of value in that case. So a deck like this black-red aggressive deck can really take advantage. You can see Rage Monger over there is one of the ones that can really give you those explosive draws. It's very narrow. But you know, look, it's a 2-3 for 3. The worst case scenario is not that bad.
Let's look at commons. Here we go, and we're going to start off with Bolt of Keranos, removal, 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 and then a couple of creatures. Tell me a bit about Farragax Giant.
Yeah, so Farragax Giant also fits that same mold for Nessian Demolock that we talked about before. Now, when you look at these tribute cards, a useful tool that I found to learn is there's a gap. Right? On one end, you get one thing, and on the other end, you get the other thing. And when that gap is very wide, you know, when one end represents something way different than the other end, that means that your opponent is going to be able to choose the one that affects them the least. And it's probably going to affect them not that much because there's so much gap in between the two. Farragax Giant, so here's my theory. The shorter the gap, the better the card. Ornithark is a card that we will probably be looking at in a little bit that has a very narrow gap. The two options are very similar.
Yes.
When you look at something like Farragax Giant, they're not similar. They're way, way different, and they're going to give your opponent a lot of options as far as what to go. So the best way to use Farragax Giant, for sure, aggressive. You want to make them make a really tough decision where you're like, hit you, hit you, hit you, Farragax Giant, and they can't just be like, sure, take the 5 damage.
Yeah, so you want them at 9 when you cast it, right?
Exactly.
Because 9 to 4 is over half of your remaining life, and that's like, do I really want to go that low?
Yeah. The default is to take the 5 damage. If you're sitting there at 17, you're just like, sure, because board position is what matters in limited. Your life total is a resource. You can use it freely, and people will. If you force them to not be able to use that life total freely, you can get them.
Okay, let's look at the uncommons. Here they come. And we're going to give you... There's a Crone Conscriptor there, Spiteful Return, Rage Monger amongst them. Bile Blight, of course, has seen all kinds of comments for constructed play as well. I love a Crone Conscriptor, though.
I love that card. So a Crone Conscriptor, I think it's still underrated. I've been drafting on Magic Online during the pre-release and release events, and I've just got them later than I think they should go. It's fragile. It's a 3/2 for 5 mana. We're not talking about a powerhouse bomb that just takes over the game, but it turns every combat you trick into what we call a threaten effect. You get to steal your opponent's creature, untap it, and give it haste until end of turn. But here's the key. This is the thing that isn't so obvious about a Crone Conscriptor. You can use your instant speed combat tricks to steal their creatures in combat. So, you know, your opponent will attack you with 3 of their creatures, and you can target your Crone Conscriptor, steal their creature, untap it. This is all before blocks, of course, and then block their creature on their other creature. You know, Ray of Command is the original card for that. We call that Ray of Commanding something for short term, or for slang, and it's a great feeling, right? I was going to say it's
filthy.
Yeah, it is just nasty when you get to do it. And what ends up happening is the entire game ends up revolving around the Conscriptor, because if you've got 2 cards in hand and mana up, your opponent cannot just be like, I'm just going to attack you. Show me. Because if you show them, the game ends. So yeah, Conscriptor I think is a little underrated. Spiteful Return is another one that I have my eye on as a very powerful aggressive card.
All right, let's see what happens when we combine the 2 sets, Born of the Gods and Theros. There you see the top commons, Lightning Strike, Bolt of Keranos, Theranos there for you. The Skull Cleaver, I like that card. Fall of the Hammer, Grey Merchant, yes, one of the big sort of signature cards in Theros. Ragemonger, Blood, Warcaller, Jet,
now,
Return.
One of the interesting things to see about the commons is you see that Fall of the Hammer and Bolt of Keranos have switched.
Okay.
And I think the reason for this is because this deck generally has smaller, cheap creatures with 2, maybe 3 power that are going to be attacking, and they don't have like what the red-green deck had, which we looked at before, which they'll have 4, 5, 6 power creatures to really abuse and really make good use of Fall of the Hammer. So instead, they'd rather have something that does the most damage possible with no conditions, basically using it to just get a blocker out of the way.
All right, we're going to pile on because we've still got 4 archetypes to get through.
Right.
Let's do blue-black. That's what we want next. Let's see what's going on in the world of blue-black.
So you can see it's one of the control. It's probably the control deck in the format, though. I think it may have taken a little bit of a hit here with Born of the Gods. I don't think it's quite as good as it used to be, but it does get some really nice tools. Shrike Harpy, Siren of the Fanged Coast are 2 really great tribute cards that you're going to see, and you get to use Shipwreck Singer, Siren of the Silent Song, which we have on the picture there, Bile Blight, and of course my best friend Keepsake Oregon, the brick wall, and so you get to combine the 2 to keep a pretty consistent control deck still.
Do you think control is the way to go generally, or is this, if you find yourself in blue-black, this is what you're going to be building?
I mean, if you're blue-black, you're going to be building a control deck. There's really no, like, unless you have an Age in the Fates, they kind of poke in a little bit there. Tormented Hero kind of teases you for that, but if you're blue-black, you want to be control.
All right, let's find the top commons from Born of the Gods in this archetype pair. Asphyxiate, Chorus of the Tides, Nyxborn Triton, Divination, and Retraction Helix. I think a lot of people didn't quite understand Retraction Helix to start with.
Yeah, Retraction Helix is interesting. You have to make some mental flips to make it work. It's not unsummon. It asks more of you, but it also gives you more back. Your creature must be untapped. It is not attacking that turn, and it also cannot have summoning sickness, but in return, you get a heroic trigger. My number 1 target for that is a Triton, right? Like, you can pick them. There's Draw a Card Triton. There's Wavecrash Triton.
Wavecrash, sure.
Yeah. So Triton Fortune Hunter, Wavecrash Triton, either one. In this deck, probably leaning more on the Wavecrash end of things. And if you get to, the first time you do that, you're like, that's just really powerful. Tap down your creature, it doesn't untap, and get to bounce something else. That's really strong.
All right, what about the uncommons from Born of the Gods? Let's take a look. Siren of the Silent Song, Siren of the Fanged Coast, Shrike Harpy, dear God, these are hard to say, Bile Blight, and Airy Worshippers, which is a card I like a lot.
Yeah, so the thing to notice here is twofold. One of them, flyer, removal spell, flyer, sort of flyer. Airy Worshippers, generating flyers down the line. So basically, evasion is the name of the game for ending it. And I think that looking at Siren of the Silent Song is one that's really important because it will be a card that you might want to pick out of an early pack in your Born of the Gods, and it's super solid. It doesn't look like, you kind of read it, you're like, well, what's going on here? Look, it's a 2-power flyer for 3 mana in your colors, and if you've ever been on the other end of one of those things, it's really annoying. Like, you need to kill it, because once it starts untapping, you just find your hand going away, you're missing land drops, your big stuff's going down, and Siren of the Silent Song really pulls its own weight.
Yeah, also, we're in a format where players want to keep things back, either because they haven't got there with their big, dumb green or red men, but also with all the heroic, where you want to do things at just the right time, or I want to cause my guy to untap with an Inspired trigger, so I'm holding my Dauntless Onslaught, my God's Willing in hand, and Siren of the Silent Song says, if you're holding stuff, I make you do it now because you're going to lose them.
That's right, absolutely. Yeah. And and the big stuff, if the other deck's very slow, they have to either discard a land or an expensive creature, and either one means that they're less likely to get something on the battlefield in the late stages of the game.
All right, let's mix them together again. Theros and Born of the Gods. We look at the combined commons and uncommons. What strikes you there, Marshall?
So the first one, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, still the &1 card. It's the best black common in Theros, and it remains that way even with the addition of Born of the Gods. If you look, it's again Theros, and then Born of the Gods, and then Theros. So again, this is a Theros-based deck still. The uncommons, though, really do add some nice things. Siren of the Silent Song, Bile Blight are really, really nice additions to the deck. Bile Blight does things that we didn't really get in the format before. And again, you see Shipwreck Singer and Siren of the Silent Song pulling weight in the air.
3 down, 3 to go. Gotta hurry. It's green-white up next.
Yeah, so green-white, we can take a look at it. It's a heroic deck. Green-white gets you some big stuff in the late game, but also allows you to really abuse some of the great stuff that you can do with Bestow and Heroic. It's really one of the best decks for that, and I think it's gone up significantly with Born of the Gods.
I love Reap What Is Sown.
Yeah, and so does Brian David Marshall.
Oh, that's good.
I like it too. I think it's really
company.
good.
Good company then.
Commons. And you can get it pretty late, too. That's the nice part. So let's take a look at commons. A Crowan Skyguard is easily the best white common creature. You're going to see that on any slide that we have that's white, it's going to show up. It's fantastic. It is exactly what any white-based heroic deck always wanted. It costs 2 mana, it's evasive, and it gets +1/+1 counters on it.
Owen Turtenwald opened his draft this morning with one of those over a Fanatic of Xenaghost, for example.
So, exactly. And you're going to see that over and over. Nyxborn Wolf tends to overperform. Swordwise Centaur is a card that I have my eye on for sure. Every time somebody plays it on turn 2, which isn't the easiest thing to do, but every time they do, I'm just like, wow, that's good. Like, that thing is going to do 9 damage to me before I can really assemble what I want to assemble here.
All right, let's look at the uncommons then. There we see them.
Yeah, you can see Reap What Is Sown. That's a card that can enable multiple heroic triggers. That's why you see it at the top again. It is a heroic deck. Ghostblade Eidolon is a great finisher. Ornitharch might be the best non-rare in the whole set. It's just kind of like a dragon for 5 mana and white. Archetype of Courage, really sweet card that can act really well defensively and then also turn the tides. Raised by Wolves, incredibly powerful aura. You got to be careful with it. You don't want to run it into removal. This is not a bestow card. If they kill your creature or bounce it, you get nothing. But if you find the right opening, it basically makes its own board state for you.
All right, let's pair them up then. Here we go. And we see the commons and uncommons from the 2 sets combined.
Now this is the great, I love the commons list here because it's Heroic Enabler, Heroic Recipient, and Heroic Enabler.
So the clue there was something to do with enabling?
Yes. Okay. So all heroic, and that is really what this archetype is about. If you look on the other side, it's all the same. Reap What Is Sown, Ordeal, Phalanx Leader, Ghostblade Eidolon, and even Heliod's Emissary all trigger or receive heroic in some level. So it's a heroic deck through and through.
All right. What about white-black? Because that's what we're going to look at next. Is this a heroic deck?
This is not. This is a grindy deck. This is an attrition-based strategy, as we have on the slide. It means it's grindy. It's trying to win through slow card advantage, basically. Adunos River Trawler, we have a picture of it there, is a great addition to this deck. Unfortunately, it does actually get sniped by other black decks because its activated ability is white, but it gets the first enter the battlefield trigger regardless. Right. So it's not quite the card that's like, if you're not black-white, you just don't want it.
It's not just for you.
It's not just for you, but you are the only one that really wants it and can take it higher. You get a couple of extra removal spells here with Asphyxiate and Excoriate. Even though they're a little clunky, the way that this deck works really does suit those nicely.
All right, let's look at the commons. Here we go, from Born of the Gods.
And again, you're going to see Asphyxiate. Now, you see a Crowan Skyguard, and to me, that just speaks to how good that card is just on raw power level, because that is not necessarily the card that wants to go in a deck like this. This is a deck that wants Scholar of Athreos. It wants to set up a bunch of regenerating blockers.
Servants of Temerret and things?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I'm surprised that's actually not on this list, but Excoriate, Oresco Sun Guide, and Weight of the Underworld. You know, these are all kind of middle ground cards, stuff that you can pick up sort of anywhere in the pack.
Let's look at the uncommons. Here we go.
And there he is, Adunos River Trawler, Ornitharch, Archetype of Courage. You can see why this archetype gets a huge bump here. Bile-Blight, Spiteful Return, these are all, I mean, a lot of these are first picks. River Trawler, you'd have to be pretty committed to take that first pick. But I mean, Ornitharch's a first pick, Bile-Blight's a first pick, and Archetype of Courage is a first pick potentially as well. So, you know, this archetype gets a lot of really nice uncommons, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see people go in there just based on that.
Let's scoop the 2 sets together and see what people have come up with.
So we see a lot of the same just power cards here. Wingsteed Rider, Hopeful Eidolon, Grey Merchant, Asphyxiate, Baleful Eidolon. Again, heavy Theros-based stuff, but if we go to the uncommons, we'll see a bit of a switch there. Adunos River Trawler, Archetype of Courage, Ornitharch, Erebos' Emissary, Heliod's Emissary. So the 2 emissaries aside, those top 3 uncommons, all from Born of the Gods.
I must say, when it eventually goes away, I think the emissaries are one of the things I'm going to miss most about Theros. Not in pure power level necessarily, and not in any particular deck, but I just feel they've been a tremendous addition to Limited in terms of there's something for everyone. There's some fun blowout stuff. There's some cool, intricate plays. There's threat of power. There's changing the game state without cripplingly tilting it one way or the other. Just think they're a really great set of design cards. I love the emissaries.
I mean, my favorite card from Theros Theros is an emissary, so I'm not going to disagree with
Which
you there.
one?
Thassa's.
Okay. Yeah.
Shelley.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay, we go to a black-green, our final archetype. We didn't choose it last for a reason.
I'm a little sad, Rich, because black-green was my favorite two-color combination. I usually splashed in Theros, and I think it's taken a bit of a downswing here in Born of the Gods. So you can see it's a combination of black removal spells and defensive green creatures allow it to go really deep into the game and start monstrosing big stuff. It has this weird sort of graveyard sub-theme that exists but isn't really clear exactly where you're supposed to go with it. So it's like you can get some value here and there, but there's no cards that you're just like, oh, this is for the graveyard deck, windmill it. You know, so you you pick up things here or there, but we did pick up some nice stuff. Grave Robber Spider's pretty good for the deck. It's another defensive, slow, mana-intensive creature that does what the rest of the deck is doing, and of course, Bile Blight kills stuff.
It's Bile Blight. Let's look at the commons then. Here we are, coming up on the big board. There you see them, Nyxborn Wolf amongst them, Ferris Band Tromper again, the 3/3 inspired, Nyxborn Eidolon.
Yeah, so here's what I want to look at. So if the Theros version was more of a control deck, these cards aren't. Nyxborn Wolf, Ferris Band Tromper, and Swordwise Centaur, and even to a point Nyxborn Eidolon, are all cards that kind of would rather be attacking or, you know, at least aren't specifically geared towards defense. So my big question is this deck just different now, right? Like maybe it's just not that same deck anymore, and maybe we're looking at a more aggressive version or a more assertive one at least.
All right, let's move on to the uncommons. Here we go.
And you see him right there, Grave Robber Spider. Again, I mean, this is a giant spider with upside, right? It's an uncommon instead of a common, so it gets this nice pump ability, which, again, this is one of those things where it touches on the graveyard, but it's kind of hard to say exactly, you know, what is this trying to do?
I want to ask you, should Drown in Sorrow be in the top 5 there, or are people just almost on a reflex going, hey, in fact, that was completely awesome, and I get to scry 1. And they're going to gradually work out that -2 isn't the magic number to kill things with?
So I think it should be on there.
Okay.
You can still clean up a lot of chaff for that. If you turn 3 it, it's one of the more powerful things you can do against a heroic deck. If it comes later, it's usually a little bit too late to do exactly what you want. But yeah, and the scry 1 is fantastic. I mean, if you've ever had that card cast against you after, you know, when they're on turn 3 and you've just played your 3-drop or whatever, and they're just like, kill your 2 guys, scry 1, it's miserable.
Okay, on we go. Let's pull them all together.
Right, so you can see Voyaging Satyr still huge for this deck. Nessian Asp and Leaf Crown Dryad are kind of the trio of green cards that we really, really leaned on when it was triple Theros. Grey Merchant of Asphodel, of course, you can pick them up whenever you can. And now we see Nyxborn Wolf kind of poke its head into the frame there. Nyxborn Wolf, very, very powerful card. Uncommons, again, Grave Robber Spider, it just fits right into the archetype. It does exactly what you want to do anyway. Nemesis Immortals is a nice finisher. And Keepsake Gorgon, I mean, it's one of my favorite cards in this set, and it's also, again, you see this theme. They're high toughness, low power, great blockers, and Keepsake Gorgon's probably the best of the bunch.
Okay, back at the news desk, Rich, Marshall, I have a final sort of question as we head away from Limited specifically. What have we learnt this weekend? We've had a chance to watch 2 great players draft, Hall of Famer William Huey Jensen, who knows, maybe a future Hall of Famer in Owen Turtenwald. We've seen 6 rounds of Born of the Gods Theros. 2 draft viewers to look at. What have we learned?
So there's 2 main things that I'm coming away with. The first one is that white-based aggressive decks are as strong as ever. If you want to play a heroic build, Born of the Gods helped you. A Crowan Skyguard is huge. If you look at Theros, there was no 2-drop for the deck. You played Traveling Philosopher or Setessan Battle Priest, and you weren't particularly thrilled about either. I mean, Philosopher's fine, it fits in the deck and it's okay, but it was just missing that heroic 2-drop that got bigger. And now we have it, and it flies too. So that is an absolutely massive change. The other end of the spectrum is red. Red is different now. Now we have Follow the Hammer, Bolt of Kronos flying around these tables at common. And when you open up your pack, those are often the best card in the pack. Red in Theros wasn't the most popular color to pick. You'd pair it up with something else, but it was usually more like support color, like you play all your lightning strikes and a few key creatures. Now all of a sudden we've got Kragma Butchers and these removal spells floating around, and people are coming into the 2 Theros packs in red. and they're having to make up, a little bit of a deficit there. So those are the two big things that I'm coming away with.
All right, thanks very much to Marshall Sutcliffe. What we want to do, we've got some video queued up in just a moment, but first, let's take the top 20 overall as we head into the second part of our lunch break. Here is the top 20 as things stand here at Pro Tour Born of the Gods. You see it there. Sean McLaren of Canada leads. Get excited, Maple Leaf fans. You're winning at the Olympics. You're winning at the Pro Tour right now. Li Shichan of Hong Kong, 9-1-1. All the 9-2s on the left-hand side, plus some on the right. You've got Hetrick, who was the overnight leader at 8-0. Sebold of Germany, the lone German now at the top, as we've seen Florian Pils drop away and Patrick Dittman fall slightly further behind. Tim Rivera of the US, more Americans, Dave Fulk, Chris Fennell. On the right-hand side, Jacob Wilson, Jared Butcher. That developing story of Raymond Tan in his first Pro Tour from Malaysia at 9-2. You've got Hendricks still there. Grin of Canada again. Alexander Orajak, don't count out that Frenchman. France are on a great tear at the moment. You see a bunch of 8-3s. They are sorted now by scorecard order, which means that Florian Pils has the best tie breaks of the 8-3s. There are a few more 8-3s lurking in the undergrowth beneath our top 20. But right now, as we head into 5 rounds of Modern, that is your leaderboard. So here's the situation. A few weeks ago, I had the chance to go to Wizards of the Coast in Seattle, where they're based, and talk to all the people who made Born of the Gods possible. We talked to designers, developers, we talked to artists, we talked to the people who write the flavor text, the people who create the world of Theros. And over the next half hour or so, we're going to lift the curtain on some of the great stories behind Born of the Gods in Inside R&D. Theros, Wizards of the Coast unveiled their latest magical setting. A world of gods and devotion, of monsters and heroes, a world steeped in the rich reimaginings of Greek myth and legend. Now it's time once more to go inside R&D, inside Born of the Gods, and inside the mind of a certain planeswalker who has been very busy since last we met.
Xenagos has ascended. He is now a god. He's been machinating these plots since we first saw him in Theros. He's set up these rituals. He's been gaining power through revels, and then he orchestrates the Great Revel, and the energy from that revel propels him to godhood, and he has now become one of the Pantheon, much to the rest of the gods' dismay.
When we start a design, we start before anybody else gets their hands on it, and that includes the creative team. So what happens is, until the creative team gets involved, we kind of have a filler story that's just kind of enough for us to build around, knowing that creative will come and actually put the real story in. So the interesting thing is, in the sort of filler story, our bad guy was a planeswalker that like brought dreams to life, you know, and that for a while it was like Dark Jace, and it's just us screwing around until we actually have some real thing. So the interesting thing is, Xenagos was created by the creative team, and that didn't happen until like they started putting the story together, and all of a sudden like, oh yeah, one of the gods, you know, there's this guy, and he becomes a god, and he's the enemy, and I'm like, oh okay, wow, I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, the different part about Xenagos is that he transitioned from basically kind of a mortal planeswalker kind of guy into a god. And we did have to work out that transition. So his initial design was as a satyr, but a lot, you know, we gave him some unique features. When he transitioned into a god, like I said, the sort of prints that were on him from his sort of partying became infused with Nyx, so that became part of his look, and also his horns became bigger and sort of curvier. They sort of grew out, and of course, based on the artwork, he sort of took on this godlike aspect where he's as big as a mountain, you know, kind of look as well, just to give him an epic feel.
Xenagos was very tricky to get into the right spot. We wanted him to be aggressive, but not insta-game over. We played with a lot of different kind of berserky, overrunny type abilities before we found the right one.
When creating the rest of the Pantheon, we wanted to touch on these other two color combinations, but we wanted to divorce them from some of the flavor that we had seen in Ravnica in the guilds. So the direction for Afara is not just the law creation and the slavish devotion to bureaucracy that we saw in the Azorius. Instead, she's playing on much more of the active and progressive aspects of blue-white.
Afara is the god of civic wisdom and cities and sort of urban planning. I know that doesn't, but the god of architecture, of great works. She is the god of industry. So if you imagine beautiful buildings, beautiful statues, that is her domain.
We wanted her to really evoke the feel of a city, the feel of building a community. So you bring in another creature, well, that's a white thing. You draw another card, that's a blue thing, and you keep building and building and building.
Afara was interesting because the wording ended up on that card being a little bit tortured, but we thought it was really important that it work for Commander with things like Astral Slide as well as Momentary Blink. So we ended up going back to the Innistrad in your upkeep, check last turn, like the Werewolves wording, even though it's a bit twisted, but it lets you build the Commander deck that you want to build with that.
Karametra is kind of a cross between Demeter and Hestia. She is god of family, god of hearth, but she's also a badass. You should see her, like the weapon that she carries. You don't want to get on her wrong side.
So for Karametra, we tried pretty hard to make a commander themed one, so we knew we wanted some kind of creatures and tokens and ramping or something that's traditionally very green-white. So we settled on a very, very large power toughness for Karametra, and hopefully people like her in Commander.
We do have to be careful about mana acceleration. The fundamental structure of the game is that you can cast a 1-drop on turn 1 and a 2-drop on turn 2. But it can be very exciting to accelerate, faster than the game normally allows. We have to watch out to make sure that that isn't always the dominant strategy. We want it to sometimes be a thing you can do and sometimes not be very powerful, so that games are different over different periods.
Karametra was one of the most difficult gods to get right because we got really good feedback on a version of the card that searched for lands, but we also don't want things that search for lands repeatedly to be one of the strongest constructed cards in the set, so getting it to a balance point where it was appealing for people who wanted to do that sort of thing, but not super overwhelming to the point where even if you weren't into that, you were going to do it if you wanted to win, was tricky. I'm happy with where we ended up, but it took us a while to get there.
Karametra was my personal favorite of the gods as we were playtesting. Just the more creatures you do, the more ramp you do, the bigger creatures you can play, the more ramp you can do, and until you just...
We knew that when we were creating the Pantheon for Theros, we wanted a representation of the god of war that is built into ancient Greek myth very solidly. But we thought there were so many good aspects of a god of war that we actually ended up creating 2 different expressions of that idea. One expression is Mogus, who is the god of slaughter. He's the expression of all the aspects of war that are deadly, that are vicious, that are grim.
Some color pairs are very easy to design for, others are harder. Black-red tends to want to destroy things and want to hurt the opponent, so they're usually in agreement about that sort of thing, so it works out pretty well.
So by name, Mogus is the god of slaughter. He is also the god of misery and suffering. One of the things that you may not have thought about is that it is actually very difficult to make a fun magic card that accurately represents a god of misery.
Through most of development, we were looking at Mogus abilities that were brutal, just killed everything, just total annihilation and pain and brutality, and was super unfun. And now we've got an ability that definitely painful, but will bring the pain over a much longer extended period of time.
I hope that the card makes your opponent a little bit miserable, but not so miserable that they want to stop playing Magic with you.
The Minotaurs of Theros are savage and brutal. They are very low on jobs and culture. If you were born a Minotaur, you're going to pick up a weapon and you're going to hit somebody with it. That's pretty much your job. There's definitely some shamanism among the Minotaurs here. You'll see some pieces of art and cards that depict Minotaur magic being used. But a lot of what the day-to-day of being a Minotaur is to find someone in one of the polises and smush them. So it's pretty familiar territory for blue-black to be the colors of lying, deception, cunning, evil. Phoenix goes a little further than that. He loves upsetting the natural order of things. The pantheon of major gods on Theros kind of chafe him, and he's looking to get one over on all of them. In fact, he's very happy that Xenagos is trying to break in and upset this pantheon. That amuses him to no end.
Phoenix likes to cause trouble, and he believes that when Xenagos ascends that he'll be able to somehow turn the situation to his own favor. He's threatened by Xenagos, but he feels like he's smart enough to take control of the situation.
Phoenix works differently than most of the other gods. Most of the gods promote more aggressive decks, want you to get creatures out there and just attack, build up bigger creatures so you can attack. This is a god for a more controlling deck.
So Phoenix is a good example of us taking a god and really like trying to put it into a certain archetype, that being a mill archetype. It's also a mill archetype that might be based more around creatures and toughness of creatures, and it's really, I think, trying to trigger off of a lot of Johnny instincts of like, how do I build this right? And like, you know, certainly not all the gods are just going to go to any old deck, and this is one of those where we're trying to create a god that really gets you thinking about new decks and building new decks.
Many years ago, we were working on Duels of the Planeswalkers. It was the second or third version, I don't remember exactly. But we make decks, and then there's Planeswalkers that represent the decks. So 2 of the decks, the creative team came and said, look, we have no Planeswalker that makes any sense to go with either of these 2 decks. And they said, we have an idea. What if we just make up some Planeswalkers, and we'll put them in, and then if they're popular, well, maybe later we'll put them in the game. So they made Ral Zarek and Kiora. And were they popular? Yeah, instantaneously, like 2 seconds after they were in Duels of Planeswalkers, I mean, people are emailing me like, when are we going to see the cards? When are we going to see them? And so like, okay, we knew we had to make them. So Ral Zarek was from Ravnica. He's in the Izzet clan. So like, it was a perfect fit. Like, obviously we go to Ravnica, we got to have Ral Zarek. But the where to put Kiora was a little trickier. So what we realized was she loves sea serpents. Like, she loves giant water monsters. And it turns out, you know what Theros has? Giant sea serpents, krakens and such, right? So we're like, oh, I mean, she's not from Theros, but it's a world she'd want to visit. It's her kind of world. And so we knew that would be the perfect place to put it.
When she gets here, she notices there's a race of merfolk creatures, of Tritons here on Theros, who treat her as an avatar of the sea god. And frankly, she doesn't mind this treatment. She doesn't mind being seen as an avatar of Thassa.
So with Kiora, one thing to keep in mind is she does have a small starting loyalty for a 4-mana Planeswalker. However, green is very well known for being able to ramp out things quickly, and Sylvan Caryatid is one of the more popular and powerful cards, and so you can often get her out on turn 3, and then she can then easily protect herself with her +1 ability, and then you might have, for example, the Caryatid to help keep her alive, and so she can go up quite quickly, and then having her other ability to explore is also another quite powerful way to ramp in its own right.
So like, we've been saving her for Theros, knowing that's where she needed to go. Meanwhile, people are just bombarding me. Where's Kiora? Where's Kiora? Where's Kiora? And like, I kept like, one day, I promise you, one day we'll make her. And finally, here's Kiora. Stop writing me, please.
While the gods and their ancient world origins may be familiar territory, Magic thrives on the new. In part 2, we'll pay tribute to the men and women inside R&D who inspired the great new Magic mechanics in Born of the Gods. A new set brings new challenges, and for R&D, that means cards and choices we've never seen before. Let's take a look at the new mechanics in Born of the Gods.
We knew we wanted a mechanic that somehow, if tapped creatures were asleep, that we wanted a mechanic that worked when things were tapped somehow. So the first idea we had was literally activated abilities you could only use if the creature was tapped. But we found some problems with that, because what we found is we didn't want you using the ability multiple times. So it wasn't like I attack and now I can use it multiple times. We wanted to use it once. So then we toyed with the idea of, well, what if I can only use it when I'm tapped, but part of using it untaps me? And then someone said, hey, isn't that a lot like the untap symbol from Shadowmoor? And we had done this, the untap symbol, but it hadn't gone over, it confused a lot of people, it didn't go over that well. So we're like, well, we didn't want to use the untap symbol. And then we came up with the idea of, well, what if it's triggered? When it untaps, it triggers. So you have to get it tapped, and then when it gets untapped, that's when it triggers and it happens.
So Inspired is a new ability word in Born of the Gods. It's found in front of abilities that trigger whenever a creature becomes untapped. Now, this could be at the start of your turn because you attacked with it last turn or became tapped in some other way, but also anytime you untap it with a spell or ability. For example, Crypsis is an instant you'll find that can untap a creature. If it has any Inspired abilities, those will trigger right away.
The reason I really enjoy Inspired as a mechanic is that it changes how you approach the game. It doesn't look like it's an aggressive mechanic, but it is. The primary way that you will get to untap your creature is because you attacked with it the previous turn. That being said, there are plenty of combo tricks and Johnny cards and little combinations that you can do to get your creature tapped without having to put it in danger.
When we get handed a mechanic like Inspired, there are two things that we have to make sure happen. One thing is that building around it is satisfying. So if you end up with an Inspired deck, it works. The other thing that we have to make sure is that there are individual exciting cards that get you to think about trying that, and that get you some of the fun of the mechanic, even if you're not willing to sign up for the whole package. So that's why there are things like Painseer in the set. That is a card that, even if you're not in for playing with your Springleaf Drum to tap your Inspired guy and build a little Rube Goldberg machine, you probably still like drawing extra cards, so maybe you'll think about playing this guy.
My favorite Inspired cards are the ones that have a cost to the trigger, so that if you want to take advantage of the Inspired ability, you have to invest some mana into it, because it's happening at your untap step, usually, before you draw, you have to make some predictions about the rest of your turn. And frequently, the cost is high for an effect that's not generally going to be as powerful as what's on a printed card. So are you going to pay 4 mana for something that's not really worth a full card but doesn't cost you a card, or are you going to spend that 4 mana on a much more impactful play from your hand?
There are often deck building puzzles to solve, that's why you have things like Springleaf Drum in the set, but if you play something like a Kragma Butcher, you might make different decisions so that you can get it attacked, and then you can get an ability. And if it's something like Kragma Butcher, then you're looking at, well, if it's bigger for this turn, now that it's 4 power instead of 2, maybe I can attack with it again. If you're looking at some of the token makers, you're like, what do I need to do to get a token made? And so you get an advantage once by doing that, but in all of those cases, you're making different tactical decisions because of the cards after you play it, not so much in the deck building phase. And it's just in such a different axis from the rest of the things going on in the set that I find that to be a lot of fun.
It is more difficult to design to a set with an unusual mechanic like Inspired. You know, if you're designing sort of regular Magic set, a lot of it is sort of paint by numbers. What do we need? We need a naturalized variant. We need to make it a naturalized variant. Whereas when something is a bit weird, you have to think about what are the implications of that. How are we going to support this mechanic and make it fun to play with? And that's really where the hard work comes in.
Tribute is a new keyword ability in Born of the Gods. So now, when a creature with Tribute is entering the battlefield, you first have to choose an opponent. Now, this is not in response to the spell. So I cast my, let's say Siren of the Fanged Coast is a good example. It's 1/1 creature, Tribute 3. So when I cast the spell, nothing happens yet. I haven't chosen an opponent to decide whether to pay tribute or not. This is especially important in multiplayer games. No one knows. It also has an ability that triggers if an opponent doesn't pay tribute. No one really knows what I'm going to target with that yet. Now, when that spell resolves, Siren of the Fanged Coast, it's about to enter the battlefield. This is where the fun happens. First, I choose an opponent. That opponent can pay tribute or not. So now tribute will have a number. Siren of the Fanged Coast has tribute 3. The opponent makes a choice. Either the creature gets that many counters before it enters the battlefield. So in this case, if the opponent pays tribute, it's going to enter as a 4/4 creature. If the opponent decides to not pay tribute, there'll usually be a consequence for that. In this case, Siren's last ability will trigger. You'll then choose a target for that ability.
Tribute came out of what we call Prix design, which is a sort of small team that assembles and does blue sky design to like think of wacky ideas, and most of them get thrown out, but it's a little less pressure in Prix design. Billy Moreno was one of the developers here, came up with the idea for Tribute. We thought that we needed to reduce the number of old mechanics as we introduced new mechanics, and Tribute seemed like a cool thing that giant monsters could do in lieu of monstrosity.
Tribute involved a lot of math, a lot of number crunching, a lot of iteration, because the decision rests not with you, the caster of the card, but with your opponent. We had to make sure that either choice your opponent made was good for you. It's your card. We want you to play with it and be happy with it. So every choice your opponent makes has to be wrong for them.
So Fanatic of Xenagos is a card with Tribute that can put the opponent to a real test of their math skills. When you're looking at whether or not you're going to be getting a 3/3 haste or a 4/4 without haste, you really have to do some math about how much damage you're expecting to take from this creature over the course of the game. What tools do you have in your hand that can deal with this creature? Do you have tools that can deal with 3 toughness but not 4? These are the types of things that you have to start adding up in your head to figure out whether or not you're going to pay that tribute or not.
So my favorite tribute card in the set is Oracle of Bones, because of the dynamic of your opponent doesn't actually know the danger of the choice. Either you're going to have a 5/3 haste creature, which is known, or get to cast any instant or sorcery in your hand, and that's an unknown.
Probably the most interesting thing about Tribute from my perspective that happened during development is that we had a multiplayer playtest team that was active during the time of Born of the Gods, and their feedback on Tribute was very interesting. The way that it was originally set up, any player at the table, if you were playing a multiplayer game, could choose to put the counters on your thing, and then you wouldn't get the cool enters the battlefield ability, you would just get a bigger guy. And in free-for-all multiplayer, that almost always happened. So what they came back with was, we want to get the cool thing more often. So now it's extremely political. When I play a Tribute guy, I get to pick who at the table is going to make the decision. And if you have something that my guy who kills an artifact or enchantment wants to kill, then that guy over there probably wants to see it dead too, so I ask him, hey, can I go kill that? And he says, yes, and then your thing dies.
It's interesting to try and read what's going on with your opponent's hand based on the choices they make with Tribute. So that's something you can get some extra information from if you're paying attention, that, oh, based on that Tribute choice, I can make some assumptions about what this player is prepared to deal with.
I'm going to make you suffer. You're going to have to choose your own fate. How do you want to die? Do you want a giant creature or slightly smaller creature that's going to do something bad to you? Which would you prefer?
Each new set needs new mechanics. But Magic fans, well, we want more. More creatures, more spells, more planeswalkers, more choices, more everything. In Part 3, we'll see how R&D goes about making Born of the Gods a set where every card counts. Just like our own games of Magic, R&D is a place where every card counts. Let's look at some of the great gameplay crammed into every corner of Born of the Gods.
One-word card names are a precious resource in Magic, so when we deploy them, we want to be able to make sure that there's going to be some cool use out of them. So it's a bit of a special occasion when a card gets a one-worder. Asphyxiate is something where we know this spell might come up more than once. So it is an investment in the future to name a card such a splashy name.
Impetuous Sun Chaser is a card that we actually spent a lot of effort on. It doesn't look that impressive. It's this simple little common, but I feel like it really encapsulates very well the idea of here's Icarus with his wax wings, and he's out of control and he's flying towards the sun and he won't listen and he runs into trouble, and your impetuous sun chaser is going to run into trouble a lot, I think.
I love the name Eye Gouge. That came from a list that I'd put together really early in design about sort of top-down cards. So Eye Gouge, people were always putting their eyes out in Greek myth, so that's where that came from.
When I started on Born of the Gods design, Scry wasn't in Theros. Scry was added to Theros, and then suddenly that's impacting all of your Born of the Gods designs. And that happens a lot, where you need to have your ear against the wall to see what's going on in the development of the previous set to make sure that you can incorporate those changes into the set you're working on.
And the way I always explain to people why Scry is so important is, have you ever ended the game and looked at the next card in your deck and like, that would have mattered? Well, with Scry, it does matter.
We usually try to get a card from each new mechanic in the set at least somewhere near constructed so that people can be excited about thinking about playing it for standard. The one that was the most interesting to try to get there was Fanatic of Xenagos. I had a couple people complain to me in the end that the difference between the modes on that card was not large enough for it to be a satisfying thing to play through, but secretly that's actually how we got the card as powerful as it is, because the bigger the difference between the two sides, the more power your opponent has to make your card not as good as you want. So as we worked on that card and we kept bringing the two halves closer together, it got closer and closer to where the way we wanted it to be.
I am in love with Chromanticore. I played it every opportunity in our limited playtesting. I would go 5-color. I would run it out there. It is awesome, and then it got an awesome punny name, so I love it even more.
Champion of Stray Souls, I think, was the last card put in the set. So this was a very late hole-filling exercise. We already had the sketch back, and we knew it had to be a black mythic card. And so I thought back to Legends, one of the very earliest Magic sets, and one of the coolest cards there was Hell's Caretaker. So I thought, what if we had a Hell's Caretaker where you could sacrifice as much as you want to get back that many creatures instead of just trading 1 for 1. So giant Hell's Caretaker.
All right, so Arbiter of the Ideal, awesome new Sphinx in Born of the Gods. Its ability can put a card from your library onto the battlefield if it's an artifact, creature, or land, and it turns it into an enchantment. Now you may notice it puts a manifestation counter on it, which is weird because the counter doesn't actually do anything. It's an enchantment whether that counter is there or not. But they wanted something like a memory aid so you can like look at it and say, there's an unusual effect here. Now originally in design, I think it was called a divinity counter, which is weird. Divinity counters actually showed up in Kamigawa and meant something to the gods there, so we didn't really want that confusion, so we changed it to something that doesn't show up on other cards.
A pendulum we like to swing in creative is the pendulum of, we call it high or low magic. It's a game about magic. There's always magic in every world you go to. But in some planes, we focus on subtler representations of magic. If you go to Innistrad, for example, there are, a curtain rustling could be a spell, or a shadow against the wall. In Theros, we went a little more epic. This is the place where you see gigantic columns of fire. You see beams of light coming from the heavens. This is a world with gods and heroes and monsters. So you're definitely going to see magic and showy magic.
Astro Cornucopia is a pretty cool card that I designed. It's similar to a card in Worldwake called Everflowing Chalice, which is kind of like an XX card, but it uses multi-kicker. So the Astro Cornucopia, you can pay a whole ton of mana and get a whole ton of mana out of it every turn. And it's pretty sweet art too. And a cornucopia is a Greek mythology thing.
Fated Infatuation is, for those of you that love the Master of Waves deck, this card is really amazing. Like, if you can get out one Master of Waves and then play another one and then scry 2 and maybe get, more stuff or permission or whatever else you need, like Fated Infatuation is just an amazing card for the mono blue devotion decks.
There are 2 black removal spells in the set that I find rather amusing. One of them is Bioblight, which is essentially our reaction right after Gatecrash is released to Burning Tree Emissary. We were sort of afraid right at the beginning of that standard when you saw stuff like Tomoharu Saito's red-green deck that was just dumping out billions of the same little dudes, and we thought, hey, it would be really nice if we had a way to kill 3 Burning Tree emissaries on turn 2. So there's that card. The other card that I find amusing for probably terrible reasons is Asphyxiate, which is basically a line of text that I thought was fun that I stole from Kaijudo. So we had never made that card before, but destroy target untapped creature was an interesting thing that I was enjoying playing with in a different game, so I stole it.
Peregrination is one of my favorite art in the set, and it's showing a young man leaving Setessa. So what happens in Setessa is, they take in orphans from all over Theros, boys and girls, and they raise them to a certain age. But because it's a matriarchal society, the boys are encouraged as young adults to peregrinate into the world and go wandering. And so this is a young man who has come of age and is leaving his mothers of Setessa and going out into the world.
Whims of the Fates is a card targeted towards the casual player group, targeted towards multiplayer, targeted towards Commander, and it is going to be fascinating to see what people do when presented with this card. Are you going to divide your permanents into 3 separate piles of equal value? Are you going to go all in one pile? Or are you going to leave one pile blank and just see how things go?
I'm a huge Commander fan, so I tried to make sure that the legendary creatures in Born of the Gods would make pretty cool commanders.
In the course of this particular set, this was one of the strongest multiplayer playtest teams that I think we've ever had operating, and speaking as the lead developer, the feedback that they gave to me was super useful, and I think a lot of the cards in the set are just way better for multiplayer than they otherwise would have been.
So where to position artifacts in a block where they are not the focus is interesting, because they are important. They are a part of the game. You want to make sure you're introducing some every time, but they can't be the focus of the set. And what I found with Theros block artifact design is that they become a great place to put a lot of the awesome top-down flavor in the set. So like the Gorgon's Head is a card that, it's not the greatest Magic card ever, but it is amazing flavor.
I think doing a small set, following a large set, there's a lot of juggling that goes on. So let's talk mechanics. Okay, so I look at mechanics like Bestow. It's the glue, it holds everything together. I gotta have Bestow, of course. Heroic is built, the whole thing we're trying to build together, trying to create the feel that we need. Heroic's doing a very important job there. Okay, so we need to have Heroic. Then Devotion is representing the field between the gods. In fact, I need to show it going down over time, so I need Devotion, like I literally need to show, so I need to have some of it to show the decline. And then Scry was greasing the wheels and trying to do things, and just development needed it, so that was important. Now also, I needed to do new mechanics, and so we came up with Inspired, we came up with Tribute, and both of them worked really well, and so those had to go in. But that meant not everything could fit in, so sorry, Monstrosity, it just didn't have room.
A journey that began with Theros continues now with Born of the Gods, ready for you to create your own MTG moments of myth and legend. Join us next time when our journey will be completed, a journey into Nyx. But until we meet again on Inside R&D, I'm your host Rich Hagan, saying bye.
Welcome now for round 12 of Pro Tour Born of the Gods. We've had our Born of the Gods Theros limited rounds. It's nothing but modern before our top 8. I'm Tim Willoughby, here with Zach Hill. And we're going to be heading down to the feature match area relatively soon. We have some great matches for you. On our main video match, Chris Fennell up against Michael Hetrick. Now, both of these players had a fantastic day yesterday, and little's changed, really.
Yeah, I mean, and what's changed is the format that they're playing right now. You've got to get your mind out of the realm of Limited. They've been focusing on that, been done very well in Limited, and get back to what's looking to be a pretty crazy modern format. They're both playing combo decks, not what we're used to seeing. Should be a great match.
Absolutely, and it sounds like the players are just about ready to start, so we're going to be heading right down to the feature match area right now to start with Chris Fennell up against Michael Hetrick.